Hi, everybody. My name is Miles, and I'm with Peak Performers. I'm so glad that you're joining me today for the second ever My Disability Story. And I'm so pleased to have Metha Vasquez here on the show today to talk with us a little bit more about her experience. Metha, welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now, Metha, we are two birds of a feather, right? We both are individuals that are hearing impaired. So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing your particular experience and especially how it might differ from my own.
Well, that's good. Yeah, because I've had some conversations with you with your own story. I think I'm in my mid 50s, and when I was born, we didn't talk about being part of the deaf and hard of hearing community. So I would say, up until about maybe 10 years ago, it was something I hid. I am deaf in one ear, and I have 80% hearing loss in the other, and so I think I just navigated as trying to fit in to the hearing world.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember growing up and felt very embarrassed by it. I felt like I also had to mask it as well too. And it took me a long time to actually start wearing hearing aids because I know this sounds dumb, but I felt vain about the tubes coming out of my ear to go to my hearing aids. And for a while, I was even wearing my hair a little bit longer specifically to cover that up. And in retrospect, that feels like so silly, but there is a perception out there, right? Like there people I feel like sometimes people can treat you differently if they do see hearing assistance devices on you. Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you too, in that I wore hearing aids when I was 12 or 13 when they really thought that they could do something. And then I only wore them for a short period because I didn't think they helped. So I didn't restart wearing hearing aids probably until I was in my late 30s, early 40s. And back then, yes, they were very big and bulky. I mean, I have hair and I could cover them up. But talking about, being treated differently, I certainly can say that in the workplace, I was bullied as a child for sure. But even in the workplace, even as of recently being bullied, I don't think people realize really that they're bullying.
Is it like a microaggression kind of thing, or was it more of an overt kind of bullying situation?
Well, the one that happened in the workplace, I would say that was pretty severe about 5 or 6 years ago. It was in an executive team meeting where another executive. I mean, I was just being open and honest. We were going around the room. It was a Monday morning, and there was like 5 or 6 people in the room. And you know how you talk about what you did over the weekend? It's like 9 o'clock on a Monday morning, and people were talking about how they love to go to football games and be a part of like the NFL. And then I was telling them like, well, I've never really done that because I don't like going to those events because I can't hear very well, so they're not super enjoyable for me. And this other executive said, "Eh, what you say?" And the
Yeah.
rest of the room went dead silent. Like it was so obvious that it was so inappropriate. And I just froze. I didn't know what in the heck to do. I was just in utter shock.
I have encountered so many situations like that with people making casual jokes, and that's like really so much of it, right? Like the casual jokes that I hear about people saying that same exact thing. And it's like, I kind of wonder, when is that joke going to get old? Yes, I am hard of hearing. And thanks for pointing that out yet again. So I guess I would leave this as a call out to any of the audience members. If you find yourself doing this, just realize that these kinds of things can be hurtful. They can make people feel awkward, and can call attention to something that we might not feel comfortable really discussing or joking about as you do. Were you born with hearing loss, or is it something that came on later in life for you?
No, I was born this way. And it wasn't until I was 2 or 3 that my parents realized I was different because I had not known any different. So I had already had like accommodating practices from a very young age. And I was told the way they found out that I had hearing loss was I was like 2 years old, and a family member called on the telephone, and my mother, and I don't remember this, she told me the story, handed me the phone, and I said, hold on, mom, I need to put it on my good ear. And she
Uh,
was like, what? So yeah, I was born with it, but it was something that we didn't discover until I was able to talk and point it out to them.
It's something for me. I was not born with it, but I had it since I was about 1 years old. As you develop, actually, as a baby, your eardrums are basically horizontal into your head, and as you grow, they gradually shift downwards. And so that's why children are so prone to ear infections, is because naturally over time the liquid can drain out a little bit easier. And so I was an individual that I went to take care and I got a series of ear infections and the water just didn't drain properly. And that's why I have hearing loss myself. So for me, it's a profound in the upper ranges. And like you, I probably read lips, I read body language very closely. I stand a little bit closer and I also use hearing assistances. But I think that for me, one of the most pivotal moments for me in realizing that having hearing loss can get you treated a little bit differently was I was in eighth grade and I was in language arts class. And I remember that I somehow just completely missed an assignment that had been given verbally. And I went up to my teacher afterwards and I said, "Gosh, I am so sorry that this happened. I really didn't mean to. Please, can I have another day to make it up?" And she says, "Miles, you're just not so good at listening, are you?" And she didn't know that I had hearing loss. That's not something, but I had been kind of casually navigating throughout the entire school system. Mom would always tell me, "Miles, go sit at the front of the class. Always go sit at the front of class so you can hear the teacher." And that was like the first moment that it kind of dawned on me of like, oh, I'm being treated a little bit differently, and maybe people don't quite understand how the hearing loss is affecting me too. As far as like accommodations in the workplace, do you ever use them?
Well, I hadn't because I told you I hid it for a long, long time. But just as you had mentioned about sitting at the front, that's what like my mother was like horrified me by always introducing me to the teacher and telling Metha has hearing loss, so she needs to sit right here in the front. I'm like, great,
Oh
that,
no.
that's what my mother used to do. But so, most of my life, I strategically sat in different places. And, like, for example, I always shut my door in meetings and things like that. So I didn't have background noise, so I could do better. But it wasn't until I worked for a company that served the deaf and hard of hearing that I didn't even ask for accommodation. This is a blessing in that my boss asked me if I needed an accommodation because I have a startle reflex, which some deaf people do because you don't hear things behind you and people scare you because you don't hear background noise. And the way my office was at this particular site was that my computer faced this way. So my ear that I didn't hear very well out of, well, I don't hear it all out of this one, was facing the door. So when people would knock, it would scare me to death. You know what I'm saying? Because I would be looking at the computer. And one day, I hadn't worked there very long. My boss came to me and he said, because I work for the deaf and hard of hearing, and he said, Metha, would you like a lighted doorbell? And because I had never asked for accommodation, which is so crazy because I managed accommodations for years in HR,
Mhm.
it didn't occur to me. And I was like, yes, I absolutely want a lighted doorbell. And you know what? It helped me so much because my computer was this way. And if I was deep in thought, I can't hear anything back here. And I'd be here, and there it goes. And I'm like, oh, okay, somebody's here.
Was it complex to kinda get that, or what's it like?
Well, here's the thing. I work for a company that served the deaf and hard of hearing. So there were many people that had a lighted doorbell. I mean, but it took them like 10 minutes to set it up. It was like so, yeah, it was like no big deal.
I wanted to ask you, at what point in your career did you transition over to kind of doing your own thing and being an entrepreneur? And tell me what that process has been like for you.
What happened with the pandemic, a lot of people took stock of what they were doing. So I had been in HR for about 25 years. And towards the middle to the end of the pandemic, I was realizing I was not getting the same satisfaction for some reason. I didn't know why. And so I decided to explore what it might be go out on my own. And one thing that I always really enjoyed as part of my HR career was individual one-on-one. development, really helping a person craft what they wanted to be next, accommodate their strengths and help them shine. And so that's how I got into, executive coaching was that realm. Now, I was very familiar with executive coaching because as an HR leader for many years, I had hired executive coaches for, individuals inside my company. So I did have, people that I could go to and ask questions to make that transition. And so that was 3 years ago. But I did craft a plan to leave. And, my number one goal was to hopefully, you know, do the business where I could continue to on with that I could stay and own my own business and continue on. And that was my goal. And I feel like I'm doing that okay.
One of the things that I really admire is that you have such a strong brand online. By the way, if you're watching this right now, go check out Metha on LinkedIn. She likes to joke that there's only one Metha, and it's true. You type in Metha, and she's going to pop right up on LinkedIn. But you have a very unique brand of specifically helping HR leaders kind of craft their personal persona, find that next job. But could you talk with me a little bit more about what it's like out there for HR individuals, how the field is changing, and what job is seeking advice would you give to them?
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think that it is changing. There's, with the oncoming of AI, the less transactional jobs are going to phase out over time. So it's going to be more advisory and analytics jobs. But I think what I find a lot is that we have very, very passionate people in HR, and what the number one thing I think I find with them is that they're so giving, they're so caring, kind of like the field that you're in, that they don't take care of themselves. So when they come to me, I'm really trying to ascertain what their goals are, helping them articulate their goals so they can make a plan and focus on themselves, because for so many years they didn't focus on themselves and they deserve to be happy just like everybody in the organization.
I love that. And how is it out there? How is it for the job seekers in general, but also for HR folks? Because there's a lot of layoffs happening right now.
Yes, I do agree. There's a lot of volatility. I think every since we had the pandemic, and then we had a massive hiring surge after the pandemic. Then we had the Great Resignation, and for the last couple of years, we've seen what we call a lot of volatility. So we see there are industries laying off, okay, and then you see industries that are hiring. It's this big shift. And I do expect that to continue on, is that people will need to be very agile in the industries, especially HR professionals can, you know, be in a variety of industries. But one of the reasons I left oil and gas HR years ago, it was because I saw the trend towards green energy, and I didn't think traditional oil and gas was a great future for me. So I say one of the things I see about the volatility is for HR leaders and other job seekers is to be very open. You can stay in your lane and your profession, but be considerate of other industries. Like if you're in the private sector, would you go to government? If you're in government, would you go to, non for profit? And what does that look like?
And I think one of the things that I admire about your brand so much is that I feel like I'm so verbose and I have so much to say, but you managed to cram some really good nuggets of wisdom into 45 seconds or less on your weekly videos. And I wanted to ask you, particularly, kind of going back to AI, the one topic you brought up a couple weeks back called the great mismatch, where job seekers are using AI to kind of craft their resume, but could you talk with me a little bit more about what the great mismatch is and what's happening right now within AI, but also within like employers that are evaluating lots of candidates?
Yeah, so the great mismatch is about that, at a macro level, that there is, 4% unemployment generally nationwide right now. But like you said, there's people that are unemployed, like their industry laid off, and but there are people that are employed. So the great mismatch is that people are out there applying for jobs all the time. I may be in a job, I'm just not happy, or I want to go back to 100% remote, and then you have the unemployed. So you've got this glut of people applying for jobs, and the mismatch is that it's really easy to go into Chat GPT or Copilot, take my resume, the job description, and craft it. Then they upload it into a portal, LinkedIn, Indeed, the company website, and then the recruiters are like, this person doesn't really have those skills, or they're trying to highlight them. So the recruiting process is longer. There's so many people in the process. They have to interview more. So it's taking longer. So the whole process where it's easier to apply, it's easier to get an AI resume, it's not really helping.
In a lot of ways, there's bots talking to bots, right? Like the companies and the employers are using AI to screen people before ever a human being actually sees them, and then all the job seekers probably are using AI to some extent to be able to recraft their resume. And I think that it's important to note too that there are some people that are getting left behind. We sit from a place of privilege where we work in mostly like white collar environments, but there's lots of people that in our country that aren't computer literate, let alone know how to use these AI tools to be able to actually gain a competitive advantage. Could you talk a little bit more about particularly older adult job seekers and where you've seen them struggle and what advice you would give to them with this kind of brand new digital world?
Yeah, so I can put it in two buckets. So the blue collar world, like the trades people, people in the retail sector and manufacturing, I still see that it may be hard to get employed, but those people are still using more traditional methods like Indeed, a simple resume or something Indeed, applying into, somebody's email address or texting. And so that process can be a little hard, but I still see that that's how they're going to market.
Hmm.
In the white collar market, that yes, there's a lot of competition. It's like everybody that knows how to hire a resume writer or use Chat GPT is just a post when I could hit the send button on every job they're remotely qualified for. So what happens to people like you're specifically talked about older workers is that they may not know Chat GPT, or they may hire a traditional resume writer, but what I work with them on is, how to get in front of the hiring officials, like strategies and techniques on how to, a phone call works, a text works, actually a traditional email where you send them, your resume, and teach them how to use their strengths to apply for these jobs. And then the other thing I say about older workers, because, I'm in that category, is that you would be surprised how many employers out there, and I would love to hear from you, really do not want to train people. There are employers out there that want somebody that has 20 years of experience because they don't want them learning on the job. What do you say to that?
you know, there are in the staffing world that is especially common, where an employer might have the expectation that somebody is going to be 100% ready to go, and I understand where they're coming from because they obviously time is money. But I also think that it's important to understand that you're always going to do some level of training, and nobody's going to walk in cold to completely understand exactly how it is that you like to do things, your proprietary software that you use, your specific processes, even the preferences that you have as far as a business. So realize that you're working with humans, you're not working with computers, and that is take it pays off. Like it ultimately, I think that it does pay off when you take the time to train people, because right now job seekers are spending less and less time in each individual occupation, and I feel like some of that is due to the fact that employers might not be investing quite as much time and energy into helping them feel fulfilled, comfortable, and successful in their role. Again, that's my bias right there, but I think that employers can take a little bit more time to grow it because we talk about the great resignation, but I think that there's a lot of other underlying factors right there from the job seeker and employee perspective that's causing that churn. And I think that it's ultimately a solution that we as employers and employees need to work on together to kind of build a better workplace.
Yeah, I do completely agree that that's also part of the great mismatch. I mean, absolutely. The job seeker is looking for maybe they're employed, but they're looking for something else because the brand or what they recruited under is like have great work life balance, or we have a learning and development program where you're going to learn. It's call it the bait and switch. They were promised and they're not delivering. So I do think we need to come together more as an employer and employees to be realistic and then also help people develop.
I wanted to ask a little bit about networking because I feel like a lot of people struggle with networking, and that's something that I feel pretty comfortable with. In fact, I met you at a SHRM or Society for Human Resource Management event, and that's how we kind of got initially connected. But what advice would you give to people that might be a little bit nervous about networking, and how would you tell them to get out there?
Okay, so yeah, I talk about this all day with my job seekers, and I'm going to make a joke. And that there's this thing called the phone. And if you remember who used to like How to Be a Millionaire, that show where you phone a friend, like yes, so How to Be a Millionaire. I tell people don't make overcomplicate this. Call your friends, call your family, tell them you're looking for a job and start there. You just get practice on saying what you're looking for, why you're looking. Nothing safer than talking to your friends and family about why you're looking for a job. Then, when you need to go outside that circle, usually it's because somebody in that friends and family network, introduced you to someone, or you're just, more practiced in telling your story.
And I think that that is incredibly important to call out because for people that are older adults that might be watching this, networking is your secret tool because you just literally know more people that you can reach out to say, I am looking for work. One of the most successful strategies that I ever saw is, yeah, I have job seekers that just literally reach out to me and say, hey, I'm looking for work. They reach out to me on LinkedIn, they reach out to me on email, they give me a call, they send me a text, whatever, but they simply take that step because I think that a lot of people are under the false assumption that if they put up the green banner on LinkedIn, that it's going to magically do all the work for them, but you have to be a little bit more deliberate about that in your reach out attempts.
Yeah, oh, I appreciate that. And pretty much, unless I miss an email, if somebody wants to have a conversation with me, I try to have a conversation with them because I know it took a lot for them to reach out to me, and it can feel difficult by putting your name out there or messaging somebody that you don't know, and you will come across some people that aren't friendly, but it's just a chance for you to tell your story. So I really appreciate that you do that too. It's just trying to get people having a conversation, and every person that reaches out to you, just have a 10-minute phone call with them.
Absolutely. What's the worst that can happen is that somebody's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't help you right now." And, you are going to miss 100% of the shots that you don't shoot. And so I think it's important to take that shot, put yourself out there, and just make people know that you are looking. So, what message would you have for employers out there that may be curious about hiring people with disabilities or maybe curious about how to better include people with hearing loss within their community?
One thing that I think they can do is like just example what my boss did. Make observations. Metha, I noticed you got startled. Why might that be? That's just opening a conversation with someone. So it's okay to notice things. Hey, it seems like just like with your teachers, just teaching them, but getting them have employers just ask, like, do you have what you need to be successful here? What could I do better to make you successful here? Is there any barriers that you have? Just very three open-ended questions like that can make somebody empowered to say, yes, if I had this, I might be a little bit more successful. As far as the deaf and hard of hearing community, what I can say is, Miles and I were talking about this before we got on camera, is that really be very open to AI summaries in meetings, be very open to always having closed captions on, to offering closed captions on. So, because we miss a lot. I mean, especially if people are talking in a group meeting or on video, we miss a lot. So, being open to that and being very open to summarizing what went on at the end of a meeting because we don't mean to miss stuff, but we just don't catch everything.
And something else that's happened to me over time too is that people might mistake me for being aloof because they'll say something to me and I just don't respond, and they don't realize that I literally can't hear them. So yeah, use this as a call to action. Like you said, it's okay to observe. It's okay to be curious too, as long as you approach it in a respectful way that shows that you care, shows that you have empathy, and shows that you ultimately want to help and that you're there as a resource for them. Mitha, real quick before we go, please tell me a little bit more about your company and how job seekers can get in touch with you.
Yes. So specifically, I help job seekers run a more effective job search. So what that means is that if for any reason your job search isn't going the way you want, that's what I help with. I also specifically help HR in that space, and then I help with career development. So I say, I help you run a more effective job search. Then when you get in a job, I help you be successful. A lot of people continue on with me so that they start the job off on a great foot and get started and are really navigating their career development more effectively as they start a new role. And that, as Miles joked earlier, the easiest way to get in touch with me is to go into the LinkedIn search bar and put Metha. There's not any other Methas there, but if you go to Google or you go to Edge or whatever, you put Metha Vasquez, and I'm always number one. So you don't really need my website. You can find me just off my name.
Well, if you're a job seeker out there and you are looking for work and you would like to have an expert's advice, please do connect with Mitha. She is there to be a resource for you. Thanks so much for joining me today, Mitha. It has been a very pleasant conversation, and I hope that any employers that are watching this right now have some takeaways about how to work with the deaf and hard of hearing community. This has been Miles from Peak Performers. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye.
Thank you.